The morning fog slowly rose above the hills surrounding the town of Haven Ridge, Ohio. With a population of 12,000, it was a typical American town where everyone knew their neighbors, and the loudest news was usually the results of the local high school football games. But 3 miles from the city center, behind high concrete walls and barbed wire, was a place most Haven Ridge residents preferred not to notice: the Miller County Correctional Facility. Dr. Sydney Mitchell parked her beat-up Honda Civic in the staff parking lot at exactly 7 in the morning, as she had done every weekday for the past 8 years. At 42, she looked like a woman tired of life, her chestnut hair streaked with early gray, her eyes lacking the sparkle that had once attracted attention. A divorce 3 years ago had left her alone in a small house on the outskirts of town, where her only companions were medical journals and a glass of wine in the evenings. "Good morning, Doc," greeted her security guard at the entrance, waving her through the metal detector. Sydney nodded in response, not particularly inclined to conversation early in the morning. She followed her familiar route through the gray corridors to the medical wing, where a stack of folders with her appointments for the day was already waiting for her. The prison infirmary consisted of 2 examination rooms, a small treatment room, and Sydney's office. The equipment was outdated, the budget was limited, and the patients were not the most cooperative. But Sydney had learned to work in these conditions, finding professional satisfaction in being able to alleviate people's suffering, even if they were on the wrong side of the law. The first few patients were business as usual: complaints of back pain, requests for strong painkillers she couldn't prescribe, and standard examinations. Around 10 o'clock, a guard named Michael Thorne knocked on her door. Thorne had been working at the prison for 12 years and considered himself its unofficial boss. A tall, broad-shouldered man of 38, with a crew cut and a piercing gaze, he had a reputation among the inmates as a tough but fair guard. Among the staff, he was known for his attempts to woo Sydney, who politely but firmly rejected all his advances. "Doc, we've got a new one," he said, peeking into the office. "She needs a medical exam. Alex Rivera, 28 years old. She was brought in last night for burglary." Sydney looked up from her computer. "Okay, bring her in." "Doc," Thorne hesitated at the door. "There's something unusual about her. She's transgender, biologically male, but, well, you'll understand when you see her." Sydney detected a mixture of contempt and curiosity in the security guard's voice that she didn't like. "Michael, to me, she's just a patient who needs medical attention. Bring her in." A few minutes later, the door opened again, and a young woman in an orange prison jumpsuit entered the office. Sydney looked up and caught her breath for a moment. Alex Rivera was strikingly beautiful. Long, dark hair framed a delicate face with expressive eyes, and there was a grace in her movements that was not lost even in the rough prison garb. "Have a seat," Sydney said softly, pointing to a chair across from the desk. Alex sat down, folding her hands in her lap, and Sydney noticed her glancing nervously at the guard standing in the doorway. "Michael, you can wait outside. This is a standard medical examination." Thorne frowned. "Doc, regulations require it." "Regulations require a guard to be present only during procedures. Talking to a patient is not a procedure," Sydney replied firmly. After a short pause, Thorne reluctantly left, leaving the door ajar. Sydney opened a new medical file on her computer. "So, Alex Rivera, tell me about your health. Do you have any chronic conditions, allergies, or are you taking any medications?" Alex spoke quietly, but confidently. She told her about the hormone therapy she had been undergoing for the past 5 years, that she had type 1 diabetes, and that she needed regular insulin injections. Sydney took notes, asking clarifying questions from time to time, and gradually noticed that Alex was relaxing. "Doctor," Alex said suddenly, "I know that people here will treat me differently, but I just want to serve my time in peace and get back to my normal life." Sydney looked into her patient's eyes and saw not only fear, but also dignity. "Alex, you will receive the same medical care here as any other inmate. As for the rest, try to stay out of trouble." After the examination was over and Alex was taken back to her cell, Sydney sat for a long time, staring out the window at the prison yard. Something about this woman had caught her attention. Perhaps it was the same sense of loss she had felt within herself over the past few years. Around noon, the prison warden, Robert Stevens, stopped by the infirmary. A large man of 55 with graying temples and an expensive suit, he looked more like a businessman than a prison guard. Stevens had been running the facility for 10 years and had big political ambitions. Rumor had it that he was considering running for state Congress. "Sydney, how's the new girl?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "Just a routine checkup, nothing out of the ordinary." "Good. Listen, I know that all patients are the same to you, and that's a credit to you as a doctor, but this is a delicate situation. We've already had calls from the parents of other inmates. They're not thrilled that their daughters are in the same block as this man." Sydney felt her shoulders tense. "Robert, Alex Rivera is a woman, and she has the same right to medical care as everyone else. I'm not arguing that. I'm just asking you to be extra careful. We can't afford a scandal. I'm talking about my career here. The reputation of this institution depends on how we handle this situation." After Stevens left, Sydney felt nauseous. She knew that Alex had been thrown into a correctional system that wasn't ready for people like her. And Sydney was the only person within those walls who could provide her with even minimal protection. The rest of the day passed quietly, but when Sydney was getting ready to go home, Michael Thorne showed up in her office again. "Doc, how about dinner tonight? I know a nice place in town." "Michael, I already told you." "Come on, Sydney. We're both lonely, working in the same place. What's wrong with spending some time together?" Sydney heard a note of insistence in his voice that alarmed her. "I don't date colleagues. It's a rule." "Rules are meant to be broken," Thorne said, moving closer. "Especially stupid rules." "I have to get home," Sydney said, grabbing her bag and heading for the door, but Thorne blocked her way. "You know, Doc, I noticed the way you were looking at Alex today. I hope you're not forgetting about professional boundaries." Sydney stopped. "What do you mean?" "Nothing much. Just reminding you that everything is being watched here, and I wouldn't want you to get in trouble for inappropriate behavior." The threat was veiled, but Sydney understood it correctly. Thorne knew he could use any situation against her, and that knowledge made him dangerous. That evening, in her empty house, Sydney sat in the kitchen for a long time, sipping wine and thinking about the events of the day. The image of Alex Rivera wouldn't leave her mind. Not only the woman's beauty, but also her vulnerability in the harsh prison environment. Sydney knew that tomorrow she would have to return to those gray walls, where human dignity was a luxury few could afford. Rain began to fall outside, and the drops ran down the glass like tears. Sydney poured herself another glass of wine and tried not to think about tomorrow's meeting with Alex and how it might change her quiet, empty life. 2 weeks had passed since Alex's arrival at the prison, and Sydney was eagerly awaiting their weekly medical appointments. Officially, these were routine consultations about diabetes and hormone therapy, but Sydney knew she was looking for any excuse to see Alex again. On Wednesday morning, as drizzling rain turned the prison yard outside the windows into a gray blur, Sydney was reviewing the appointment schedule when Thorne knocked. "Doc, your favorite is here," he said with a smirk that Sydney found unpleasant. "Show her in, please." Alex entered the office, and Sydney noticed a bruise on her left cheek. "What happened?" "Nothing serious," Alex said, sitting down in her usual spot. "Just a misunderstanding with my cellmate." Sydney stood up and moved closer to examine the bruise. "That doesn't look like a misunderstanding. Who hit you?" "Doctor, please. If I start complaining, it'll only get worse." Sydney felt anger rising in her chest. "Alex, you have a right to safety. I can talk to the administration." "No!" Alex said sharply, raising her voice for the first time. "I'm sorry, but no. You don't understand how things work here. If I complain, I'll be a target for everyone." Sydney returned to the desk but couldn't concentrate on medical questions. "Tell me about yourself," she said suddenly. "I mean, what brought you here? Burglary doesn't seem like something a woman with your education would do." Alex was silent for a long time, staring out the window. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes. I worked as a programmer at a small IT company in Columbus. Good salary, my own office, colleagues who treated me normally. 3 years ago, I decided to finally transition to living as a woman. I changed my name, started hormone therapy, made everything official." Sydney nodded, encouraging her to continue. At first, everything was fine, but then the company got a big contract with a conservative corporation. The new bosses weren't thrilled about having a transgender employee on staff. First, they moved me to the basement, then they cut my salary, and then they found a reason to fire me. For what? Officially, it was for violating the dress code. I wore a skirt to work, and they thought that was inappropriate for a man. Alex smiled bitterly. After I was fired, no one wanted to hire me. As soon as potential employers found out about my past, they found reasons to turn me down. Sydney felt a lump in her throat. What happened then? I ran out of money quickly. I moved out of my apartment and lived in a shelter for a while. But it was difficult there too. Neither men nor women would take me in. I ended up on the street. Alex fell silent, and Sydney could see how difficult it was for her to talk about it. Last winter, I didn't eat for 3 days. I saw an empty house with a window open. I thought I'd just spend the night there, maybe find some food. I didn't plan to steal anything, honestly, but the owner came home early and called the police. How long did they give you? 2 years. The judge said I was a threat to society. Alex looked at Sydney. You know what the worst part is? At that moment, I was grateful. At least here I have a roof over my head and food. Sydney felt something tighten in her chest. Alex, I'm so sorry. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm not asking for pity. I just want you to understand that I'm not a criminal. I'm just a woman who is trying to survive in a world that isn't ready to accept people like me. They sat in silence for several minutes, and Sydney knew that something important was happening. This wasn't just a conversation between a doctor and a patient. It was real human communication, something she had been sorely lacking in recent years. Doctor, Alex said quietly, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why do you work here? A doctor with your qualifications could find a better place. Sydney thought for a moment. Honestly, after my divorce, I wanted to hide from the world. It's quiet and predictable here. No one expects anything special from me. Did they used to? My ex-husband was a surgeon, very successful, ambitious. He wanted me to be the perfect doctor's wife, organizing charity events, socializing with the right people, having children. Sydney paused. But we couldn't have children, and I'm not good at pretending to be happy in public. And he left? For his nurse, young, beautiful, and, as it turned out, pregnant. Sydney smiled. A trivial story, right? Not trivial, painful. Sydney looked at Alex and saw in her eyes an understanding she hadn't seen in a very long time. Yes, painful. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Thorne entered, and Sydney noticed Alex tense up. Time's up, Doc, said the guard. 5 more minutes, Michael. Rules are rules. Thorne approached Alex. Get up. Time to go back to your cell. Alex stood up, and Sydney saw Thorne deliberately push her shoulder as he led her to the door. Careful, prisoner. You'll fall. After they left, Sydney sat for a long time, thinking about their conversation. She realized that what she felt for Alex was more than just sympathy. It was something more, an attraction that frightened her with its unexpectedness. The next day, Sydney arrived at work earlier than usual and found Stevens in her office. Robert, is something wrong? Sydney, we need to talk. He looked troubled. I got a call yesterday from the father of one of the inmates. He wants her transferred to another prison. Why? He claims that a pervert in her unit is a threat to his child. Sydney felt anger rising. Alex isn't a threat to anyone. She's a quiet, educated woman who's just trying to serve her time. Woman? Stevens raised an eyebrow. Sydney, I understand that you're a doctor and you have to be tolerant. But let's call a spade a spade. This is a biological male with mental health issues. She is a transgender woman with legally changed documents, and she has no mental health issues. Listen. Stevens leaned closer. I don't want to cause you any trouble, but the parents are threatening to go to the press and I can't afford a scandal, especially now that I'm considering running for state Congress. And what do you suggest? Limit your contact with this inmate, only emergency medical care and no long conversations. Sydney stood up. Robert, I'm not going to deny medical care to any of the inmates. This isn't about medical care. It's about the fact that you're spending too much time with this man. Thorne says your consultations last half an hour. Sydney realized that Thorne was watching her and reporting to her superiors. Michael has no medical training. It's difficult for him to judge how much time a quality medical consultation requires. Sydney, Stevens's voice hardened. This is not a request. This is an order. I don't want to hear any more complaints about the inappropriate behavior of our medical staff. After her boss left, Sydney sat down at her desk and tried to concentrate on her work. But her thoughts kept returning to Alex. She realized she was trapped by her own feelings. During her lunch break, Sydney went out into the prison yard and saw Alex sitting alone on a bench. The other inmates kept their distance, and Sydney realized how lonely this woman must feel. Their eyes met through the bars, and Alex smiled faintly. Sydney felt her heartbeat quicken. She knew she was falling in love, and it scared her more than Stevens's threats and Thorne's surveillance. That evening, Sydney sat at home with a glass of wine, trying to sort out her feelings. In her 42 years, she had never been attracted to a woman, but Alex was special, smart, beautiful, vulnerable, and completely out of reach. The next morning, Sydney decided to take action. If the administration wanted to restrict their meetings, she would find a way around it. Alex needed support, and Sydney was the only person in this place who could give it to her. She didn't know that Michael Thorne had already made his decision. Watching the changes in Sydney's behavior, he realized he was losing his last chance at a relationship with her. And he wasn't going to let some pervert come between him and the woman he considered his. The November days in Haven Ridge were getting shorter, and by 4 in the afternoon, twilight was already gathering outside the windows of the infirmary. Sydney tried to follow Stevens's instructions and limit her meetings with Alex, but each time she found medical reasons to continue the consultations, checking sugar levels, adjusting insulin doses, monitoring hormone therapy. The doctor always had good reasons. On Friday morning, Sydney was reviewing medical records when she heard screams coming from the hallway. Running out of her office, she saw 2 guards breaking up a fight between inmates. Alex was lying on the floor, covering her face with her hands, and a large woman with tattoos on her arms was standing over her. "What's going on here?" Sydney rushed over to Alex. "Nothing much, Doc," said one of the guards. "Just a little roughhousing. Rose thinks her new cellmate is getting too big for her." Sydney helped Alex to her feet and saw blood on her lip. "Get her to the infirmary, right now." "Doc, maybe you're making a mountain out of a molehill?" Thorne interjected. "It's just girls fighting, it happens." "Michael, she's my patient, and she's bleeding. Get her to the office." In the infirmary, Sydney carefully cleaned Alex's lip and applied a bandage. "What happened?" "Rose Mackenzie. She's sitting in for assault. She thinks I have no right to be in the women's wing." Alex winced as Sydney treated the scratch on her cheek. "This morning she said that if the administration didn't transfer me to the men's wing, she would take matters into her own hands." "Alex, this is serious. You need to file a complaint." "About what? That I'm considered a man in a woman's body?" "That's not news, doctor." Sydney put down the gauze pad and looked Alex in the eyes. "My name is Sydney, and I don't consider you anything other than a woman who deserves respect and protection." Alex raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Sydney is a beautiful name. You're the first person in years who's thought so." A silence filled the room, filled with unspoken words. Sydney knew she was crossing every line possible, but she couldn't stop herself. "Sydney," Alex said quietly, "what is happening between us?" Before Sydney could answer, the door swung open and Thorne entered. "Doc, are you done? I need to take the prisoner back." Sydney noticed the change in Thorne's expression when he saw them sitting close together. "Yes, of course. Alex needs some peace and quiet. Make sure she's put in a single cell for today." "A single cell?" Thorne smirked. "Doc, this isn't a spa. If she can't stand up for herself, maybe she should ask for a transfer to the men's wing. She stays where she is, and I want her protected from further attacks." After Alex was taken away, Sydney stood at the window for a long time, watching the prison yard. She knew the situation was getting out of control, but she didn't know how to stop it. On Monday morning, Stevens called Sydney into his office. With him was a gray-haired man in an expensive suit. "Sydney, meet David Harris, chairman of the Prison Board of Trustees. Mr. Harris, Dr. Sydney Mitchell, our prison doctor." Harris looked Sydney up and down. "Doctor, I hear you have a special relationship with one of the inmates." "I have a professional relationship with all inmates, as doctor and patient." "Of course, but you see, some parents are concerned. They believe you are showing undue attention to a certain male inmate who is being held in the women's block." Sydney felt her blood boil. "Alex Rivera is a woman. She has the appropriate documentation." "Documents can be forged," Harris said coldly. "Biology cannot." "Mr. Harris," Sydney stood up, "I am not going to discuss the medical aspects of transgenderism with someone who has no medical training. And I'm not going to tolerate a scandal in a taxpayer-funded institution," Harris replied sharply. "Dr. Mitchell, your job is to provide medical care to inmates, nothing more." After the meeting, Sydney realized that she was under serious pressure, but this only strengthened her resolve to protect Alex. On Wednesday, during their next consultation, Sydney locked the office door from the inside. Alex looked at her in surprise. "Sydney, what's going on?" "I need to tell you something." Sydney sat down across from Alex. "I've been thinking about us for the past few weeks, about what's going on between us." "Sydney, don't. You could lose your job." "I'm already losing my job, and to be honest, I don't really care." Sydney reached out and gently touched Alex's hand. "I care about what might happen to you when I'm gone." Alex didn't pull her hand away. "Sydney, you understand that I'm a transgender woman, that I have a complicated past, that I'm an ex-convict? I understand that you're a smart, beautiful, kind woman who deserves love." The word love hung between them, and Sydney realized she hadn't said it by accident. "Sydney," Alex's voice faltered, "I've been thinking about you too, every day. You're the only one who sees me as a person." They sat there, holding hands, and Sydney could feel her heart beating so fast it was about to jump out of her chest. "What are we going to do?" Alex asked. "I don't know, but I know I can't lose you." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud knock on the door. "Doc, open up!" It was Thorne's voice. Sydney quickly let go of Alex's hand and went to the door. "What's going on, Michael?" "Why is the door locked? This is a breach of protocol." Sydney opened the door. "I was conducting an examination. Such procedures require privacy." Thorne entered the office and looked closely at both women. "What kind of examination?" "Medical. That's not your area of expertise, Michael. My area of expertise is security. And when a doctor locks herself in with a prisoner, it raises questions." Thorne moved closer to Sydney. "Doc, I think you're forgetting where you are. This is a prison, not a private clinic." "Michael, take prisoner Rivera to her cell." "With pleasure." Thorne roughly took Alex by the arm. "Come on, beautiful. Time's up." Sydney noticed how hard Thorne squeezed Alex's arm and how she winced in pain. After they left, Sydney realized she could no longer hide her feelings. But she also knew that Thorne suspected something was wrong. On Thursday, Sydney was unable to meet with Alex. Stevens canceled all scheduled medical consultations, citing an inspection. On Friday, Sydney learned the real reason. "Doc," Thorne entered her office with a satisfied smile. "Have you heard the news? Your girlfriend is being transferred." "Where?" "To the maximum security men's wing. The chief decided it would be safer for her there." Sydney felt the ground slip away beneath her feet. "Michael, this will kill her. They'll treat her like a toy in the men's wing." "Maybe it'll help her realize who she really is." "When is she being transferred?" "Monday morning. So, if you want to say goodbye." Thorne smirked. "Although maybe you shouldn't. You've already attracted too much attention." And Sydney hardly slept that weekend. She knew that Alex's transfer to the men's wing was a death sentence. Transgender women in men's prisons were subjected to constant abuse, and the system rarely protected them. On Sunday evening, Sydney made her decision. She couldn't let Alex die, even if it meant destroying her own life. On Monday morning, Sydney arrived at work with a clear plan. She had to find a way to help Alex escape, or at the very least, get her transferred to another facility. She knew it was a crime, but love made her risk everything. But when she got to the medical center, she found her office sealed off and a note on the door. "Dr. Mitchell, report to the chief immediately." In Stevens's office, Sydney saw not only the chief, but also Harris. and an unfamiliar woman with a tape recorder. "Sydney," Stevens said. "This is a representative from Internal Affairs. We have serious grounds to believe that you have violated professional ethics." Sydney realized that the trap had been sprung. Someone had reported her, and that someone could only be Michael Thorne. What exactly am I being accused of? Inappropriate relations with a prisoner. We have a witness who claims to have seen you holding prisoner River by the hand. Sydney looked out the window at the gray prison walls. Somewhere out there was Alex, possibly already being transferred to the men's wing, and Sydney was powerless to help her. "You have two options," Harris continued. "Either you resign voluntarily and agree never to work in the correctional system again, or we will initiate formal disciplinary proceedings with possible criminal consequences." Sydney closed her eyes. She knew she had lost, but she also knew she couldn't just give up and leave Alex to her fate. "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow morning," Stevens said. "After that, we will proceed without your consent." As she left the office, Sydney heard Thorne's satisfied laughter behind her. She turned and saw him standing in the hallway, watching what was happening. "Too bad, Doc," he said. "Things could have been different if you'd made the right choice." Sydney realized that Thorne had not only been watching her, but had also orchestrated the entire situation. His rejected feelings had turned into a thirst for revenge. That evening, Sydney sat at home, trying to find a way out of the situation. She could give up and lose her job, but that wouldn't save Alex. Or she could try to take action and risk everything. Around midnight, Sydney made her final decision. Tomorrow she would try to see Alex one last time and find a way to help her, even if it meant the end of her own career and possible prison. Tuesday began with freezing rain that drummed on the windows of the infirmary, as if foreshadowing trouble. Sydney arrived at work at 6 in the morning, an hour earlier than usual, hoping to find a way to see Alex before she was finally transferred to the men's ward. The seal had been removed from her office, but now her every move was being monitored. "Good morning, Doc." The guard at the entrance greeted her. "I heard you had some trouble yesterday." Sydney didn't answer, walked to her office, and found Thorne there, leafing through her medical records. "Michael, what are you doing?" "Checking to see if there are any other violations in your records." He looked up and smiled. "You know, Doc, things could have been different if you hadn't been so principled. Get out of my office." "Your office?" Thorne laughed. "Doc, you've forgotten where you are. Everything here belongs to the government, and as the senior security guard, I'm responsible for keeping order." Sydney sat down at the desk, trying not to show how nervous she was. "Where's Alex Rivera?" "Oh, your girlfriend? She's in the men's wing. They transferred her at 5 this morning." Thorne leaned closer. "You know, Doc, she got a very warm welcome there, especially Big Joe. He's in for rape, and he loves newbies." Sydney felt the blood drain from her face. "Michael, if anything happens to her..." "What? What will you do? Complain to the boss?" Thorne leaned over the table. "Doc, you do realize your career is over, right? After yesterday, no one will ever hire you to work in medicine again. Why do you hate her so much?" "Her?" Thorne grinned. "Doc, I don't hate that freak. I'm just removing the obstacle between us." Sydney realized she was dealing with a man who had lost the line between obsession and sanity. "Michael, there can be nothing between us. Ever." "There could have been, if you hadn't been corrupted by that creature." Thorne straightened up. "But never mind. Soon everything will be back to normal." After Thorne left, Sydney tried to call the men's quarters, but the call was denied. She knew Alex was in mortal danger, and she had almost no time left. At 10 in the morning, Sydney was summoned to Stevens' office. There she saw the same committee she had seen the day before. "Sydney, have you made a decision?" asked her boss. "I want to see Alex Rivera before I submit my resignation." "That's impossible," said Harris. "The prisoner has been transferred to another unit for security reasons." "Whose safety, hers or mine?" "Sydney," Stevens rose from his desk. "You've crossed the line. We're coming to meet you halfway by letting you leave without a scandal. Don't make this worse." Sydney realized that she would not be able to get a meeting with Alex through official channels. But she also realized that she could not just walk away and leave the woman she loved to be torn apart by predators. "Fine," she said. "I'll sign the resignation letter. But first, I need to get my personal belongings from my office and finish up with my current patients. You have until the end of the day, Harris said. You're not to be here tomorrow. Back in the medical wing, Sydney began to make plans. She had access to the staff quarters and knew where the surveillance cameras were located. If she could get to the men's wing unnoticed, she could at least warn Alex of the danger. During lunch break, Sydney took advantage of the fact that most of the guards were gathered in the cafeteria and walked down the staff corridor to the men's wing. Her heart was pounding as she approached the familiar clang of metal doors. The guard on duty in the men's block was surprised to see her. "Doc, what are you doing here?" "Medical consultation. Inmate Rivera needs her insulin dose adjusted." "I don't know, Doc. Nobody told me." "This is an emergency. She has diabetes and the wrong dose could be fatal." The guard hesitated, but Sydney's medical authority won out. "Okay, but hurry." Sydney walked down the hallway of the men's block, feeling the inmates' eyes on her. The atmosphere here was completely different, more aggressive, filled with hidden violence. Alex was in a solitary cell at the end of the corridor. When Sydney saw her, she barely suppressed a scream of horror. Alex's face was beaten, her lip was bleeding, and her eyes were filled with shock. "Alex, what happened to you?" "Sydney?" Alex couldn't believe her eyes. "How did you get here?" "It doesn't matter. Tell me what happened." "When they brought me here this morning, 3 inmates said they wanted to test how much of a woman I was." Alex trembled as she spoke. "The guards didn't intervene. One of them even laughed." Sydney felt a rage threatening to explode. "Alex, we have to get you out of there!" "How? Sydney, this is a prison. There's no way out." "There is. I have a plan." Sydney quickly looked around to make sure no one was listening. "There's going to be a medicine delivery to the infirmary tonight. I'll say you need emergency medical attention and ask them to take you there. Then..." "Sydney, you're crazy. That's escape. They'll lock you up." "I've already been fired. I have nothing to lose." Alex looked at Sydney with such tenderness that Sydney's breath caught in her throat. "Sydney, I can't let you ruin your life because of me. You are my life, the only thing that has made sense in the last few months." They stood on opposite sides of the bars, and Sydney reached out to touch Alex's face. "I love you," Sydney whispered. "And I love you," Alex replied, pressing herself against the bars. "Doc, time's up!" the guard shouted from the hallway. 7 o'clock tonight! Pretend you're sick! I'll take care of the rest!" Sydney returned to the infirmary, feverishly thinking through her plan. She knew she only had one chance, and if anything went wrong, they would both be in even greater danger. At 5 o'clock in the evening, Sydney locked herself in her office and began to prepare. She found a nurse's uniform that was in the infirmary for emergencies and hid it in her bag. The plan was simple. Transfer Alex to the infirmary under the pretext of an emergency, change her into the nurse's uniform, and get her out through the service exit. At 6:30, a guard from the men's block burst into the infirmary. "Doc, we have a problem! Inmate Rivera has lost consciousness. She says she's having heart problems." Sydney grabbed her medical bag. "Quick, bring her here!" A few minutes later, Alex was brought to the infirmary on a stretcher. Sydney immediately saw that she was pretending, but she was playing her part very convincingly. "Leave us alone. I need to examine her." "Doc, maybe we should call an ambulance?" "First, I need to stabilize her condition. Get out and don't let anyone in." When the guard left, Sydney quickly locked the door. "Alex, hurry, we don't have much time." She took out her nurse's uniform. "Change your clothes." Alex sat down on the stretcher. "Sydney, are you sure about this?" "The only thing I'm sure of is that if we don't do something, they'll kill you." Alex quickly changed her clothes, and Sydney helped her hide her hair under a nurse's cap. "Now listen carefully. We're going to the service exit. If anyone stops us, you're the new nurse I'm showing the procedures to. Got it?" Alex nodded. Sydney opened the office door and peeked into the hallway. A security guard was standing at the entrance to the medical unit, his back to them. "Let's go." They walked down the hallway to the service exit, and Sydney thought the plan had worked when she heard a familiar voice. "Doc, stop!" It was Michael Thorne. He was walking down the hallway with 2 other guards. "Sydney, what's going on?" I was told that a prisoner is having heart problems. Yes, I'm taking her to the main building for further examination. Thorne looked closely at Alex, and Sydney saw suspicion in his eyes. Strange. The prisoner looks a lot like River, just in different clothes. Sydney felt her stomach tighten. Michael, it's the nurse. Take off your cap, Thorne ordered Alex. Alex slowly removed her cap, and her long hair fell down over her shoulders. Here she is, Thorne said with a triumphant smile. Dr. Sydney Mitchell and prisoner Alex Rivera. Attempted escape. Michael, please, Sydney began. Please? Thorne laughed. Doc, you thought you could fool me? I've been watching your every move. Other guards grabbed Alex's arms. Stop! Sydney shouted. This was my idea. She's not to blame. Of course she's not to blame. Poor victim of your twisted fantasies. Thorne moved closer to Sydney. You know, Doc, I've been thinking long and hard about how to punish you for the humiliation you put me through. And now I know. Sydney saw something terrible in Thorne's eyes. Not just anger or jealousy, but real hatred. Take the prisoner to solitary, he ordered the guards, and Dr. Mitchell will come with me. Where? To my office. I need to file a report on the escape attempt. Sydney realized she was trapped, but she couldn't let Alex suffer because of her. Michael, let her go. Do whatever you want with me, but let her go. Touching, Thorne sneered, but I'm afraid it's too late now. The guards led Alex away, leaving Sydney alone with Thorne. He took her by the arm, not roughly, but almost tenderly. Sydney, there's still time to fix this. Tell them the prisoner forced you to help her, that she threatened you, and then never. Think about it. Your career, your freedom, is one pervert worth such sacrifices? Sydney pulled her hand away. Alex is the best person I've ever met, unlike you. Thorne's face darkened. You've made your choice, Doc. Now live with the consequences. He led Sydney down the corridor to the administrative block. But instead of his office, he took her into an empty storage room. Michael, what are we doing here? Thorne locked the door from the inside. Finishing what we started. Sydney felt fear. Michael, you're scaring me. And you've been driving me crazy. For 3 years, I've been trying to get your attention. For 3 years, I've been a gentleman. And you chose this mutant over me. Michael, open the door. Now. You know, Doc, I've been thinking a lot about what to do with you both. And I've come to the conclusion that the problem needs to be solved once and for all. Sydney saw Thorne take something out of his pocket. It was a syringe. What's that? Insulin. A large dose of insulin? For a diabetic, it's medicine. For a healthy person, it's poison. Sydney backed away toward the wall. Michael, don't do anything stupid. Stupid? Thorne moved closer to her. Doc, this isn't stupid, it's justice. You ruined my life. Now I'm going to ruin yours. People will find out. There will be an investigation. Dr. Sydney Mitchell committed suicide after being caught trying to organize the escape of a prisoner with whom she had an intimate relationship. A very touching story. Sydney realized that Thorne was serious about killing her. What about Alex? Oh, she'll be found dead in her cell too. Suicide out of desperation. It happens a lot with people like that. Michael, please, I'll do anything. Just don't hurt her. It's too late, Doc. Way too late. Thorne lunged at Sydney, and they fell to the floor, struggling for the syringe. Sydney was stronger than she looked, but Thorne was bigger and angrier. Stop! Help! Sydney screamed, but she knew the warehouse was in a remote part of the building. Thorne pinned her to the floor and brought the syringe to her neck. Goodbye, Doc. Say hello to your pervert in hell. Sydney felt the prick of the needle and a coldness spreading through her body. Thorne injected her with the entire dose of insulin. You know, Doc, death won't be quick. You have 20 minutes to think about your mistakes. Sydney lay on the floor, feeling the hypoglycemic coma begin. Her arms and legs went numb, and her vision blurred. Michael, she whispered, don't kill her, please. That's none of your concern now, Thorne said, standing up. Your business is to die beautifully. He left the warehouse, locking the door behind him. Sydney was left alone, slowly dying from an insulin overdose. She spent her last moments thinking about Alex, about her smile, their conversations, the love that could have changed both their lives. But now it was too late. Sidney Mitchell died in an empty warehouse at the Miller County Correctional Facility at 8:47 p.m. on Tuesday. The cause of death was an insulin overdose, and Michael Thorne was already on his way to Alex Rivera's cell to finish what he had started. Detective Lisa Connor received a call at 3 in the morning. A 35-year-old woman with short red hair and tired eyes. She had been working in the Major Crimes Division for 8 years and had seen enough not to be surprised by late-night calls. But this one was special. Connor here. Detective, we have a dead body at the county jail. The warden wants you there right away. Lisa glanced at her watch and sighed. An inmate? No, staff. The prison doctor. 40 minutes later, Lisa stood at the entrance to the Miller County Correctional Facility in the drizzling rain. She knew the place. She had been there several times on cases involving inmates. But this was the first time she would be investigating the death of a staff member. Prison warden Robert Stevens met her personally, which was strange. Usually such matters were handled by his deputies. Detective Connor, thank you for coming so quickly. I'm afraid we have a delicate situation. Give me the facts. Stevens led her through the security checkpoint. Dr. Sidney Mitchell, 42 years old, our staff physician, found dead in a storage room around 11 o'clock last night. Cause of death? Presumed overdose of insulin. Suicide? That remains to be determined, but there are circumstances that could explain it. Lisa paused. What circumstances? Yesterday, Dr. Mitchell was caught trying to help a prisoner escape. She had an inappropriate relationship with that prisoner. Inappropriate in what sense? Stevens hesitated. Romantic. The inmate is a transgender woman. There was a scandal, and the doctor was about to be fired. Lisa jotted the information down in her notebook. Where's the body? The warehouse was located in the administrative wing of the building. Lisa examined the scene, noting several oddities. The body was lying against the far wall, but there were no objects nearby that could explain why Sidney had come here. The door was locked from the outside, ruling out suicide. Who found the body? Security guard Michael Thorne. He was doing his evening rounds. I need to talk to him. Thorne appeared a few minutes later. A tall man with short hair and an attentive gaze. Lisa immediately noticed the scratches on his hands. Officer Thorne, tell me how you discovered the body. I was doing my routine rounds. I saw that the warehouse door was ajar, even though it's usually locked. I looked inside and found the doctor. What time was that? Around 11. I called the medics and my superiors right away. Lisa studied Thorne's face, trying to read his emotions. How long did you know Dr. Mitchell? 8 years. We started working here around the same time. Did you notice any changes in her behavior lately? Thorne paused, as if considering his answer. She's been acting strange for the past few months. She spent a lot of time with inmate Rivera, more than was necessary for medical consultations. Did you report this to management? Yes, it's my responsibility to ensure safety. After talking to Thorne, Lisa asked to see Alex Rivera's cell. The transgender woman was being held in solitary confinement for attempting to escape. Alex sat on the bunk, staring at the wall. When Lisa entered, she raised her head, and the detective saw not only grief, but also fear in her eyes. Miss Rivera, I'm Detective Connor. I'm investigating the death of Dr. Mitchell. She was murdered, Alex said immediately. What makes you think that? Sidney would never kill herself, especially now when she was trying to help me. Lisa sat down on the only chair. Tell me about your relationship with the doctor. For the next half hour, Alex recounted how her relationship with Sidney had developed. The pressure from the administration, the hostility of the other inmates, and especially Michael Thorne's behavior. He hated Sidney for rejecting him, and he hated me for choosing her. Do you have any evidence of his hostility? He threatened us both. He said he would find a way to separate us. Specific threats? Alex thought for a moment. Yesterday, when we were caught, he said to Sidney, "Now live with the consequences." And he knew about every meeting we had. He was following us. Lisa wrote down every word. The picture was starting to become clearer, but she needed hard evidence. Miss Rivera, when was the last time you saw Dr. Mitchell? When the guards took me to solitary confinement. around 8 o'clock in the evening. And Thorne? He stayed with Sydney. He said he had to file a report. After talking to Alex, Lisa returned to the crime scene. The investigation showed that the warehouse door had indeed been locked from the outside. The keyhole was fresh. In addition, fabric fibers that did not match Sydney's clothing were found on the floor. "Detective," a forensic technician approached her. "I have something interesting." He showed her a plastic bag with evidence. "We found skin under the victim's fingernails. Someone scratched her killer." Lisa remembered the scratches on Thorne's hands. "Can you compare the DNA?" "Sure, but we need a sample to compare it to." "I'll get it." The next morning, Lisa received the preliminary autopsy results. The insulin overdose was confirmed, but the injection had been administered in the neck, an unusual place for suicide. In addition, the struggle marks on Sydney's body indicated that she had been resisting. Lisa called Thorne to the station for further questioning. This time, she noticed that he looked nervous. "Officer Thorne, yesterday you didn't mention the scratches on your hands." Thorne looked at his hands. "Oh, that? Nothing. I was helping my wife in the garden yesterday. Rose bushes. In November, we pruned them for winter." Lisa knew he was lying, but she needed irrefutable proof. "I'll need a DNA sample to rule you out." "Why?" "Standard procedure. You found the body." Thorne agreed, but Lisa could see he was worried. The DNA results came back 2 days later. It was a perfect match. The skin under Sydney's fingernails was Michael Thorne's. Lisa got an arrest warrant and went to the jail. She found Thorne in his office, talking on the phone. "Michael Thorne, you're under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Sydney Mitchell." Thorne hung up and slowly turned to her. "Detective, you're making a mistake. Your DNA under the victim's fingernails says otherwise." "I can explain." "Explain it at the station." When Thorne was taken away, Lisa felt relieved. But the case wasn't closed yet. They needed to find a motive and piece together the full picture of the crime. A search of Thorne's home yielded unexpected results. In his bedroom, Lisa found numerous photos of Sydney, some of which had been taken secretly. On his desk was a diary full of entries about her. October 15th. Doc refused to go to dinner again, but I saw the way she looked at me. She's just shy. November 3rd. That pervert is ruining her. Doc was a normal woman until she met him. November 18th. They think they can fool me, but I know what's going on between them. It's time to stop this. The last entry was made on the day of the murder. Today, it will all end. Doc will realize she made the wrong choice, and if she doesn't, she'll regret it. During questioning, Thorne initially denied all charges, but when Lisa showed him the diary and photos, he broke down. "You don't understand," he said. "I loved her. I tried to get her attention for 3 years, and she chose that mutant over me." "So you decided to kill her?" "I didn't plan it. I just wanted to scare her, make her see that she was making a mistake. But when she said I was worse than Rivera," Thorne clenched his fists, "I couldn't take it." "Tell us what happened in the warehouse." "I got her in there on the pretext of filling out some paperwork. I wanted to try one last time to change her mind, but she called me a sadist and said she would never be with me." "And then you got the syringe?" "I always carry a first aid kit with me. There was insulin in it. We use it for diabetics. I thought if she died, at least she wouldn't be with him." Lisa felt disgust for this man, but continued her questioning. "What about Alex Rivera? Were you planning to kill her too?" Thorne nodded. "I wanted to do it that same night, make it look like suicide. But you got there too fast. Why did you hate her so much?" "She stole Sydney from me. If it weren't for her, we would have been together." Lisa realized she was dealing with a man who had lost touch with reality. In his twisted mind, Sydney belonged to him by right, and Alex was an obstacle that had to be removed. Michael Thorne's trial was held in the Haven Ridge County Court. The case received widespread coverage in the local press, especially after details of the relationship between Sydney and Alex became known. The defense tried to portray Thorne as a man who had temporarily lost his mind out of jealousy. But the prosecutor, after studying his diary and witness statements, proved that the murder was premeditated. Alex testified as a witness. She told the court how Thorne had stalked Sydney, threatened them both, and created an atmosphere of fear in prison. "Sydney was the only person in that place who saw me as a human being," she said. "She died trying to protect me from a system that saw me as a monster." The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. Thorne was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After the trial, Lisa visited Alex in prison. The transgender woman was transferred to another facility where she was treated more humanely. "What's next?" Lisa asked. "I'll serve the rest of my sentence. Another year and a half. Then I don't know. I'll try to start a new life." "Do you have any plans?" Alex smiled for the first time in months. "Sydney always said I had a talent for programming. Maybe I'll find a job in IT. I'll try to live the life she wanted for me. She would be proud of you." "I hope so." 3 months after the trial, changes were made to the Miller County Correctional System. Stevens was dismissed after an investigation revealed numerous violations at the prison. The new chief introduced strict anti-discrimination rules and created support programs for LGBT inmates. Lisa often thought about the case. It showed her how prejudice and hatred could destroy the lives of innocent people. Sydney and Alex were just trying to find love and understanding in a cruel world, but the system wasn't ready to accept them. On the anniversary of Sydney's death, Lisa visited her grave in the city cemetery. Alex was already there with a bouquet of white roses. "You got out early?" Lisa asked in surprise. "Good behavior and a new rehabilitation program. I'm working as a programmer at a small company." They stood in silence at the simple headstone inscribed with the words, "Sydney Mitchell, Doctor, Defender of Justice." "She changed my life," Alex said quietly. "She taught me that I am worthy of love and respect." "And your love changed the system. Now others won't have to go through the same thing." Alex nodded. "That would be the best tribute to her." As Lisa drove away from the cemetery, she thought about how justice doesn't always mean a happy ending. Sometimes it just means that the truth wins out over lies, and love proves stronger than hate, even if the price of that victory is too high. The story of Sydney Mitchell and Alex Rivera became part of Haven Ridge's local history, a reminder that every person deserves dignity, and that the system should protect the most vulnerable, not destroy them.